I knew something was wrong the night I realized I was more afraid of my boyfriend coming home than of the drunk guys at the diner. Most people think the late shift is the hardest part of my day. Greasy plates, short tempers, burnt coffee. But the diner is simple. People come in, they eat, they leave. I know what I'm walking into. Home with Tyler felt like stepping onto a minefield I couldn't see. When we met, he was all easy charm and stupid jokes that made me laugh even when I didn't want to. He worked at a car wash, bounced between shifts, and bragged about walking out whenever a boss disrespected him. I just moved out of my parents' house and wanted my own life so badly that his chaos felt like freedom. The first warning signs were money things. He was always short on his half of the bills, always borrowing from my tips, and acting hurt if I questioned it. Then he started showing up at the diner during my shifts. At first, it felt sweet. He'd sit at the counter, tease me for working too hard, wait to walk me home. After a while, I noticed he barely looked at the menu. His eyes stayed on me. If I laughed at a regular's joke, he'd bring it up later. "You light up for that guy," he'd say, half smiling. "Didn't know you liked old dudes in baseball caps?" At home, his jokes turned into little cuts. He complained about the mess, about money, about his jobs. And somehow every conversation ended with me apologizing while he brought cheap flowers and promised he'd change. The night everything shifted, I was on break behind the diner, sitting on a milk crate, scrolling my phone. 6 missed calls, 8 texts. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? You think I'm stupid. Who are you with?" My schedule was taped to our fridge. He knew exactly where I was. I stepped out by the back gate to call him, and he was already there, leaning against the brick wall with his phone in his hand. "There you are," he said quietly. "Been busy?" "I'm at work, Tyler," I said. "You know that." He looked me over, then gave this small, flat smile. "Yeah, I know." He kissed my forehead like he'd just caught me doing something and let me off the hook, then walked away. After that, he treated me like something to monitor. He timed my walk home, demanded to see my phone, and called me dramatic whenever I said I felt constantly wrong. One Sunday after a brutal double, I opened our apartment door and stopped cold. The place was trashed. Pizza boxes on the table, empty cans on the floor, ashes ground into the rug I'd scrubbed last week. My framed photo of my little sister lay face down near the TV stand. The glass cracked straight through her smile. Tyler was on the couch with 2 guys I didn't know, yelling at the game on TV. One of them had muddy boots propped on my favorite throw pillow. Tyler glanced over his shoulder like I'd come home early to his party. "Oh, hey," he said. "You're late." Something in me went completely still, like a door quietly shutting. I stepped over a can, set my bag gently on the table, and looked around at the stained carpet, the broken frame, the strangers in the home my paycheck was paying for. For the first time since we'd moved in together, I didn't feel crazy or sensitive. I just knew, with this calm, heavy certainty, that I was done pretending this was normal. The next morning, the guys were gone. The cans were stacked by the trash, and Tyler was humming in the kitchen like nothing had happened. He slid his arm around my waist while I made coffee. "Sorry about the mess," he said. "I cleaned most of it. Boys' night got a little out of hand." "Why is my sister's picture broken?" I asked. He froze. "One of the guys bumped the table," he said. "Relax. It's just a frame." It wasn't just a frame, but anything that mattered to me turned into you being dramatic, so I let it go. For the moment. In a few days, the rug still smelled like stale beer. I'd picked up an extra shift to cover the utilities he forgot to pay, and he still hadn't touched the trash. On Friday, he showed up at the diner again. He sat in my section and ordered the cheapest burger, then spent an hour glancing at the clock and at my tables. When I finally dropped the check, he didn't reach for his wallet. Instead, he slipped his hand into the pocket of my apron, fingers closing around my tip wad. "Babe," I hissed. "I'll put it somewhere safe," he murmured. "You lose stuff when you're tired." I watched him tuck my crumpled bills into his jacket like he'd just done me a favor. That night, when I asked for the money back, He sighed. I used some for gas, he said. I'll pay you back when my check clears. You know I'm good for it. He wasn't. Checks got held. Bosses screwed him. Schedules changed last minute. Every excuse came with a little shove of guilt. After a while, I stopped inviting my friends over. He mocked their jobs and voices, called them bad influences. When I visited my sister, he'd blow up my phone, then sulk for days, texting about how I'd left him alone again, and must have money for gas, but not for us. I worked double shifts, then came home and apologized for not doing enough. I came home from a Sunday shift with sore feet and a paper bag of leftover pie the cook had boxed up for me. In my head, I'd already planned it. A hot shower, a slice of pie, an early night. When I opened the fridge, the bag was gone. Tyler was on the couch, gaming, crusted plate beside him. Hey, I said, did you eat the pie that was in there? He didn't pause the game. Yeah, you're always saying I never eat what you bring home. That was for me, I said. You could have asked. He laughed. It's just pie, Amanda. Calm down. It wasn't about the pie. It was the rent money, the broken picture, the fake apologies, the constant suspicion, the way he could walk into my job and pluck the cash I'd sweated for right out of my pocket. Something in me snapped, but not the loud, screaming kind. It was quiet, like a thread breaking. I looked at him. The beer on the table he hadn't paid for, the game system I'd bought on a payment plan, the bills stacked on the counter with my name on all of them. My whole life had been arranged so he could drift through it, pushing buttons and expecting prizes. And suddenly, I knew I was done being one of them. I didn't tell him that. I swallowed, nodded at nothing, and went to take my shower. Under the hot water, I pictured the lease, my bank account, whose name was on what, my tips going somewhere he couldn't grab with one quick hand. He always called me emotional and irrational. Fine, I decided, turning off the tap. I'd handle this exactly the way he said I couldn't, calmly, carefully, and in a way he wouldn't see coming until it was far too late to fix. I started small, because that's the way to move around a guy who thinks control is the same thing as love. At the diner, I asked my manager to swap a regular shift. I said I needed to match my sister's schedule so she could give me rides. What I didn't mention was that I wanted to be home while Tyler was at work and thought I was still wiping down counters. On my new afternoon off, I went straight to the leasing office. The manager, Mrs. Ellis, knew me. I was the one who dropped rent off early. Tyler was just the boyfriend. I have a question, I said, sitting in her office. The lease. It's just me on there, right? She checked her screen and nodded. Just you, Amanda. Why? If I needed someone to leave, I asked. Someone who isn't on the lease? What happens? Her face shifted in that way older women do when they've seen this scene 100 times. She pulled out forms and walked me through guest policies and notice periods. So if they won't go? I said. Then they're trespassing, she replied. You call us, or the police if you feel unsafe. I walked out with a copy of my lease, a stack of papers, and something I hadn't had in a long time: leverage. Next, I opened a new checking account on my lunch break. I rerouted my direct deposit, changed the PIN on my card, and set up an automatic transfer into a savings account Tyler didn't know existed. At home, I stopped arguing about money. When he borrowed cash, I let him grab loose singles from the jar by the door. My real tips went straight from my apron to the bank. I also stopped talking about my schedule. If he asked when I'd be home, I shrugged. Depends if we're busy. If he asked how much I made, I called it a slow night. I let him think I was worn down, the same old Amanda who would bend to keep him from sulking. In reality, I was counting days. I wrote out a budget: deposit on a studio, first month's rent, a moving truck. Every time Tyler took from me, I added another line to the notebook I kept in my locker at work. Not for him, for me. Proof this wasn't normal couple stuff. It was theft with pet names. His breaking point came on a Tuesday when his boss cut his hours again. He came home, slammed the door, and started pacing. "They're out to get me," he ranted. "They gave Rob my hours. Rob. That guy can't even show up on time." I stirred spaghetti on the stove. "Maybe they like that he doesn't scream at customers," I said before I could swallow it. Tyler's head snapped toward me. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said. "Dinner's almost ready." He disappeared into the bedroom, then came back with his phone like a prop. "You know what?" he said. "We wouldn't be so stressed if you didn't blow money. Eating out, giving your family gas, buying decorations and stupid frames." My eyes went to the new frame on the counter, holding my sister's reprinted picture. He followed my gaze, smirked, and picked it up. "Like this," he said. "Classic Amanda." "Put it down," I said quietly. He held it over the sink for a beat, watching my face, then laughed and set it back. "Relax. You're so sensitive." That was when my plan sharpened. If I just slipped out, he'd show up at the diner, cry, tell anyone who'd listen that I'd ruined his life. He'd keep reaching for me. Sure, I'd cave. No, I didn't just want to leave. I wanted him to feel what it was like to reach for something he thought he owned and find nothing there at all. I picked a date that looked ordinary on the calendar. 2 weeks out, a Monday. No holidays, no birthdays, nothing special. Just a random square I decided would be the last day he used my address. In that time, I moved like a person doing spring cleaning. I went through drawers, pulled my documents, my birth certificate, my social security card, the title to my old car. Anything important went into a tote I kept at the back of my closet, behind a stack of sweaters. At work, I picked up an extra overnight and stashed most of the cash. My manager slipped me the number of a cheap moving company for when you're ready, and told me which days were slowest if I needed time off. She didn't ask for details. She didn't need to. The Saturday before my date, I signed a lease for a small studio across town, key warm in my hand. No shared bills, no guests, no one tracking my shifts. On Monday morning, I left for an early shift, with my usual uniform and a packed duffel. Tyler was half asleep on the couch, muttering something about asking his boss for more hours. Instead of going straight to the diner, I met the movers downstairs. They were fast and quiet. My bed, my dresser, my clothes, my dishes, the framed picture of my sister. The TV stayed. The game system stayed. Anything he used more than me stayed exactly where it was. By the time he'd normally be getting up, my life was loaded into a truck. I dropped my keys with Mrs. Ellis on the way out. "Remember," she said, tapping the file, "he's not on the lease. We'll handle it from here." At my new place, I set my phone on the counter and waited. It didn't take long. First, a call, then 3 more, then a string of texts. "Where are you? Why is your key not working? What is this notice on the door? Are you serious right now?" Mrs. Ellis had posted the official letter that morning, giving him a short window to collect his things and leave. No yelling, no drama, just policy. I let the calls stack for an hour, then answered with one message. "The lease is in my name," I wrote. "Per management, you have to move your things out by the date listed. Do not come to my job. Do not contact me again." He replied exactly how I knew he would. Walls of texts about betrayal, about how I'd used him, how nobody would ever love me like he did. Promises to change. Threats about showing up anyway. I took screenshots, saved them in a folder titled "Just in Case," and blocked his number. That week, he came to the diner twice. The first time, my manager stepped between us and told him he needed to leave or she'd call the police. The second time, he didn't make it past the door. "You're safe here," she told me afterward, wiping her hands on a towel. "He doesn't own this place. Or you." I heard through a mutual acquaintance that he ended up staying on a buddy's couch. Then another. Without my paychecks smoothing things over, his late fees caught up. So did his attitude. He lost his job after screaming at a customer in the parking lot. No one called me to come calm him down or vouch for him. For once, he had to stand in the middle of the mess he'd made without dragging me into it. My revenge wasn't fireworks or some perfect movie speech. It was the quiet click of my new apartment door locking behind me. It was opening my banking app and seeing money that wasn't already half spent in someone else's head. It was coming home from a late shift to a place that stayed exactly how I'd left it. Sometimes, I still catch myself flinching at random noises, waiting for someone to accuse me of something I didn't do. Then, I look around at the tiny studio, the neat stack of bills with just my name, the picture of my sister on the nightstand with unbroken glass, and I breathe. The moral, if there is one, is simple. People who love you don't make you feel like you're always one wrong move away from losing everything. And sometimes the smartest revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's walking away so quietly that for the first time, they have to live without you to blame.